Okay. Hey everybody, welcome to Fast and Asian Film Festival, day 3 today. My name is Gabriel. I'm your host today for this session, Possibilities for Asian Filmmakers. Here with my friend Luke Azevedo, the Film Commissioner from Calgary, as well. We'll be joined with Christine Chiu and Evilyn Zhang from Canada Media Fund and Telefilm Canada. So before we get into it, just want to do a quick land acknowledgement here. So I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional territories of the peoples of Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes Blackfoot First Nation tribes of Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, and the Stoney Nakoda First Nation tribes of Chiniki, Bearspaw, Wesley, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation. City of Calgary, also known as Mohkinstsis, is also homeland to the historic Northwest Métis and Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. So before we get into things, this is a great opportunity, I think, for everyone who is interested in not only in working in the film industry, but also opportunities to create new products and create new projects. I know that there's a great presentation that the ladies will be showing us, and then maybe we'll get Luke to tell us a little bit more about what's happening and what the opportunities are. So maybe we'll start with Christine and Evilyn, and they have a really great presentation, and we'll let them take it away.
Perfect. Thank you. So I'm Christine. I'm at Telefilm, and I work on the CMF PA team. So that's the Academy Fund Program Administration team. So we can, Evilyn and I both work on the same team, and we can tell you about our programs. And we do have a little slideshow prepared to give you an overview. Evilyn, do you want to start?
Yep, and a little bit self-intro. Hi, everyone. My name is Evilyn Zhang. I am also a business analyst of the CMPA team at Telefilm Canada. Today, Christine and I will co-present this kind of like a Canada Media Fund 101 presentation to everybody to give you a bit of idea of what we do at Canada Media Fund and Telefilm Canada. So first of all, a little bit background information. So CMF and Telefilm Canada, what is the relation? So CMF is the organization that determines the budget and programs and their guidelines of all the programs. And Telefilm Canada is actually the administrator of all the programs. So we do all the application review and working with all the producers who apply for the CMF funding. That's why you will use the Telefilm dialogue platform to apply for the CMF programs, and you'll be facing us, Telefilm analysts. And Telefilm Canada actually has 4 offices across the country in Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, and Halifax. On top of us, there's the business of analyst team. We also have a fantastic coordination team who are focusing on helping the new and existing clients to navigate to the dialogue system and answer your questions regarding the application process. So without further ado, here. Funding contributors. Basically, the CMF receives financial contributions from Government of Canada and Canada's cable, satellite, and IPTV distributors. The reason of that, like to mention this information, is to basically set a fundamental eligibility requirement. Let's say if you have a project that is, fantastic, you scored with Netflix or Hulu, which are actually not Canadian broadcaster or not Canadian streaming services, then that is unfortunately not eligible to trigger a CMF application. While I'm presenting, I'll actually just turn off my camera so I can focus on the content. And each year we have a different level of budget to work with. And this year, 2022 to 2023, we have a total of $365 million budget to work with. And this budget is allocated through different programs and different markets. So usually we allocate 2/3 of the fund into the English market and 1/3 in the French market through 2 main streams. One is the experimental stream, and the other is Convergent Stream. you can see we have different budget allocated to different programs each year. This year, like I said earlier, we have a total of $365 million budget to work with. Under the Convergent Stream, the purpose is to support the development and production of Canadian audiovisual content for broadcast television and digital distribution, which means, the traditional TV series, the feature-length documentary series or documentary or one-off documentary that will be broadcasted on the Canadian broadcaster like CTV, CBC, Bell Media, or their digital distribution services like CBC Jam. And then we also have the experimental stream that is to support innovative and leading-edge interactive digital media projects. So what does that include? The experimental stream is providing funding, investing in innovative digital content, includes interactive content, games, apps, and software, and business model innovation. For my lack of experience in the experimental side, all I can think about interactive content is, let's say you have a 360 website, or you have a very interesting app you want to get some funding from the Canada Media Fund. Under the experimental stream this year, we have $44.4 million, a number $44.4 million budget. So this year, we have this amount of budget. It's to encourage the development of leading edge interactive DM component and software and applications, like we briefly mentioned before. I don't know about our audience today if you have the interactive content production side, but there is a program under the experimental stream that may interest you as film producers and content creators. Is the Digital Linear Series Program. Basically, this program provides funding for web series in their second season and beyond. Let's say if you have successfully launched the first season of a web series program, and you are picked up by an online distributor or like a streaming services for your second and third season, and you may be eligible to apply for some Canada Media Fund under this experimental stream. And next one, the Convergent Stream, which is probably the biggest stream that we have most of our funding allocated underneath. This is the stream that invest in high quality Canadian convergent content. And this stream supports 4 genres: drama, which is your scripted content, variety and performing arts, documentary, children's and youth. Drama, you can do comedy, you can do rom-com, you can do thriller under this genre, and the documentary can have your feature-length documentary, docusoap, or one-off. And children's and youth, you could have a live-action children's show, or you can have animated show, or you can have a show that's a mixture of both elements. And the reason CMF supports these 4 genres is mainly because CMF wants to support the genres that are not really that are actually underrepresented in the market, because we know, like, reality shows, that's already very popular, and it's very it's already easier to get fundings from broadcaster or from streaming services. So that's why CMF is focusing on these 4 genres. And let's say you are interested in applying for a CMF program under the Convergent Stream. Basically, you will have to check on 3 major categories. The first one is your project. Your project needs to meet the 3 essential requirements. The first one is a TV component will be certified by CAFCO and achieve a 10 out of 10 points. I think our audience today is probably very familiar with the CAFCO points system. You have your director, writer, editor, music composers, your key creative personnel. Basically, this is to ensure that your key creative personnel are mostly Canadians. And the second one is the underlying rights are owned and significantly and meaningfully developed by Canadians. That means the producer or who is applying for this fund must develop the project and also owns the copyright of the project. Let's say if we have an American production company who wants to shoot their project in Canada and they want to leverage whatever funding is available in the Canadian market, and then hire a Canadian producer who did not participate in the developing process or who did not own the copyright, then unfortunately that is not an eligible applicant. And last essential requirement is the TV component is shot and set primarily in Canada. So this one means, the project is shot in Canada, is about Canada, is talking about things that's relevant to Canadian audience. But some exceptions can be made if the project is, let's say, a documentary. Your storytelling requires you traveling to different parts of the world. That could be accepted on a case-by-case basis. And then this big category is also echoing earlier when we mentioned the CMF is receiving funding from Canadian broadcaster, satellite, and IPTV distributors, because this basically is a trigger. Who can trigger your Canada Media Fund application? So the project must have the support of a CRTC licensed Canadian broadcaster. That means CBC, CTV, Bell Media. Or you have the support of a CRTC licensed VOD services. Let's say you have a license fee from Rogers, or you have it from Bell Media, that is also eligible. Or let's say you have a project that's picked up or licensed by a Canadian digital distribution services like CBC Gem, that is also qualified and eligible under this category. The last but not the least, project must be convergent, because we're talking about Convergent Stream. That means your project must meet 2 convergent criteria. The first one, the project must be aired on a CRTC licensed traditional Canadian broadcaster, or it is made available on a digital distribution services, which is online services controlled or operated by a Canadian broadcaster, or it is on a CRTC licensed VOD services. And once you met that first convergent criteria, we also need to have a second convergent criteria met. That means your project could also be made available like after on the traditional TV. You could also be made available on their online services, or you could attach a digital media component. That could be a social media campaign, that could be a web series, that could be even an interactive website that's associated and linked with your TV project. So when we're talking about the genres, and we mentioned drama, documentary, children and youth program, and variety and performing arts, there must be something that's in between, and that's not necessarily eligible for a CMF program. Let's say you have a really wonderful idea about doing a talk show about current affairs, or you have a really interesting travel log show that you want to shop around. These, unfortunately, under the current CMF guidelines, are not eligible. But, well, this is a brief list, but not a complete list of all the ineligible genres. But the good thing is, if you're not certain, or if you're not sure about your program, whether the genre or your whole project is eligible for a CMF eligibility requirement, you could always apply for a eligibility application via the Telefilm dialogue system. Basically, this is a pre-development consultation. One of our business analysts will actually look at your project and determine whether you meet one of the genre requirements or your project is eligible or not. But please keep this in mind, it's not a creative review. The business analyst will not give you notes on your creative or on your synopsis. This is just a consultation session that will help you determine whether you're eligible to apply for a CMF program or not, and also to save the applicants a lot of time putting together a big application only to find out later, oh, you're not eligible, right? Okay, and next I'm going to pass this to my colleague Christine to go over some detailed programs.
Okay, yeah, I'll go over some of the programs that we have available and that may be of interest. So I'm going to share my screen. And I believe it's being shared. Okay, all right. So the first off is our development programs, and they are separated into 3 types. There's selective programs, and that is when applications are scored according to an evaluation grid. So two types, two subcategories of that, or programs that you can apply to, is the early stage development program, and this is targeted towards writers. And one requirement of that is that you have to, like, for an eligible writer to apply, you need to have produced written work, and further details are available in the guidelines. The deadline is October 13th. A different type of selective development program are international co-development incentives. So these could be with international treaty co-production countries, such as there's ones with Germany, there's ones with Northern Ireland, and the application deadlines varies according to the incentive, and they open at different times of the year. So definitely check the CMF website to see what might be open, and if there's a country that you want to cooperate with, there could be a co-development incentive for you. The second type of development program is what we call first come, first serve. And basically, there's different opening dates here. And we say there's an opening date, but sometimes they're so oversubscribed. Please treat it as a deadline, especially for this program here, pre-development, which is opening June 7th. Sometimes once it opens, all the funding is allocated on that first day. So definitely treat these as opening times, as deadlines. The third type is the CMF Development Envelope Program. So this program is open, and it is according to broadcasters' envelope of fundings available for producers. And I'll get back to this program in a bit, and I'll talk about it with our production programs. So I just wanted to highlight a little bit more about the pre-development program. So eligible applicants for this are Canadian production companies. Eligible applicants may apply with a maximum of 1 project. And just a note for people of interest in this audience is that 40% of the budget is reserved for regional projects. And regional projects are defined as, for English, is 150 for producers that are based 150 kilometers away from Toronto, because we know that's where the broadcasters are based. So we want to make sure that there is enough of this program that is available for regional projects and producers. As well, note that 25% of the budget reserved for diversity community projects, and this is a defined term in the guidelines regarding what is a diverse community, and is part of the CMF equity and inclusion strategy. So eligible costs for this program are for pre-development creative materials. So although you might want to apply for a script, most likely you're applying for funding for a treatment or for a sizzle instead of an actual demo, and is really to try to get you to the next stage of funded development. And another requirement is that your project must not have received any previous CMF financing, and returning series are not eligible for this program. Different requirements are that you also need to have an agreement with the writer for the project if you're doing a treatment or a script. And in order to apply, and how to qualify, is that you need to have a letter of interest. And very important here, and why this program is oversubscribed, is that it's only a letter of interest. The broadcaster or funder doesn't need to give any financing. They're just giving you a letter of interest saying that they are interested in your project. And you can get the letter of interest from a Canadian broadcaster or these participating provincial funding agencies. So of note, Manitoba Film and Music, Alberta Film, they are part of this program. One thing to note is that all of these provincial funding agencies here and Canadian broadcasters are only limited to signing 2 letters of interest. So that could be one barrier in order to getting a letter of interest. And the amount of funding that you can apply to is up to 40% of your project's eligible costs or budget, or $46,000. And the contribution type is a repayable advance. So that means that if your project goes ahead into production, then yes, the CMF would expect the funds to be repayable. However, if your project doesn't go into production, then you do not have to repay the monies. Again, the opening date is Tuesday, June 7th. So keep that in mind if you're interested in this program, because basically if you are eligible, then you will get the funding, but you have to apply on the opening date. Okay. And now I want to talk a little bit about our production funding programs. Again, it's similar to development in the sense that there's 3 different types. There's selective programs, they're first come, first serve, and then there's envelope. A little note about the type of CMF program contribution of CMF contributions that we have. It's basically there's 2 types, which is license only or license and equity. So license only CMF contributions means that they won't grind against your federal tax credits when you're applying for it. But if you also get equity financing from the CMF, then it will grind against your federal tax credits. Why you'll get equity is that, for example, for envelope programs, if it's over, I believe, 20% of CMF financing for your production, so 20% of the budget, if it's over that, then the next 30%, you can apply up to 49% of funding, or so the next 29% is equity financing. So that's just a little note here. And types of selective programs that we have available. So these programs are scored according to an evaluation grid, and they're deadline based, so that if you apply and then there's a selection committee. There's usually a few weeks between the process where programs are being selected. Then you'll receive funding based on how you score according to the evaluation grid. And this grid is different depending on which program you apply for. And I'll get into a bit more for the pilot program for the racialized communities, as I believe that it might be a program that could be of interest. First come, first serve programs are similar to development. Basically, they are oversubscribed. Like, for example, Northern Incentive, which is targeted to applicants in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. It opened on April 26th, and it was oversubscribed within the first few days. But to note is that this program opens again in July with additional funding. So if you're a northern producer, then make note of that. Another program that I want to get back into is the English Regional Production Bonus. This is a very oversubscribed program as well, opened May 10th. And there's another opening in September. But basically, you have to apply on the first day, because as long as you're eligible and your project is eligible, then you will receive the funding. And then the last type of program is the CMF Performance Envelope, and I'll get into that in a bit. So the pilot program for racialized communities. Note that the application is upcoming. It's on June 9th. And in order to apply, you have to have 15% confirmed Canadian third-party financing at application. And the license fee threshold basically means that in order to receive funding, you need to have a broadcaster financing of at least 10% of your budget. And what you can ask for from the CMF is the lesser of 60%, or $750,000 for drama and animation, or $550,000 for documentary, variety, and performing arts and children and youth projects. So what are the eligibility requirements? Make note that at least 51% of the ownership of the applicant company and copyright must be owned and controlled by the individual producer that is a member of a racialized community. In addition, the producer or the screenwriter or the director of the project must be a member of a racialized community. So I think I read that wrong, but it means that the producer and either the screenwriter or the director must be a member. So that's something new that this year, because last year it was only the producer. And feature films must also meet the 10% license fee threshold. Last year it was 5%. One note here, it says confirmed by persona ID numbers. So you have to fill out on the CMF website, there's a form for persona ID. And we have to check in order to say whether you're a member of a racialized community, you have to fill out this persona ID form, basically. So that's what this means here. As part of this pilot program for racialized communities, there's a production part of it, and there's also a pre-development and development part. So you can apply for pre-development and development funding as well, but the opening date, and you can treat it as a deadline, is Tuesday, September 13th. This is a first come, first serve program. So if you are eligible for this program, then you will most likely get the funding as long as you apply on the first day. One other note is that if you're eligible and there's an oversubscription of applications, meaning that on the first day we receive more applications than we have funding for, then we would prorate the applications, prorate the funding available for each application so that everyone receives funding, but you might not get the full ask. So the full ask, so an ask that you can ask for pre-development is 75% of your budget, or $25,000. For development, it's 75% of the budget, or $200,000. And applicants can only apply for one application for development and one application for pre-development. All right, and a different type of program that Evilyn mentioned was the Digital Linear Series program. This program is not convergent, so that means you don't need a broad, like the convergent, the two criteria that Evilyn mentioned in order to apply. This one, you only basically need to be a web series that is in the second season or later, and it only has to be for online platforms. It does have to be in the CMF eligible genre, so the 4 eligible genres. And a series is defined as 3 episodes. And the maximum that you can ask for your season is 60% of the budget, or $250,000. As well, there is a CMF inclusion equity strategy component to this, which is that at least 2 points in the evaluation grid, as this is a selective program. At least 40% of the cumulative paid producer, screenwriter, director positions are held by members of a diverse community. Again, these are defined in the CMF guidelines of what is a member of a diverse community. And in order for us as analysts to confirm that, you need to fill out a persona ID form. Okay, so this is the last type of program, which is our performance envelope programs. And these are controlled by the broadcaster, but the CMF calculates the amount of funding that is available for each broadcaster in the beginning of our fiscal year, which was in April. Our fiscal operates from April 1st to March 31st every year. The broadcaster allocates funds from the envelope to a producer's project. So broadcasters make decisions on which projects they want to fund. You should pitch to them. And the producer applies to us. Once the broadcaster says they like your project, then you would apply to us as the CMF program administration team at Telefilm for funding, and then we'd commit funding to your project. And the year starts again. So CMF calculates the envelope for broadcasters depending on what they funded in the previous year. And as example, or as this is available on our CMF website, but basically this is a listing of the envelopes that are available. This is specific for development for each one of the broadcasters that have a development envelope. So one thing I want to note here is alternative access. So alternative access means that if you don't see a broadcasters that is listed here, but that you've received funding for, of course, it has to be a Canadian broadcaster that's CRTC licensed. But if you receive funding from a broadcaster is not eligible here, you can apply. There's $60,000 allocated each year to these type of alternative access broadcasters. Another thing to note is that TELUS was actually an alternative access broadcaster last year, but because they've committed enough funding, they were allocated a envelope this year. And similar to this is for our production performance envelope programs, and these are all the different types of broadcasters. We often get a question, which is, oh, which broadcasters do I pitch to? Well, one beginning point is that on the CMF website, this budget is listed. You should these are the broadcasters that have an envelope, so maybe they should be on your list. And there is also a type here for alternative access, which is that if you receive funding from a CRTC licensed broadcaster that is not listed here, you can apply to us with alternative access, and 1.5 million is allocated to those types of broadcasters. Okay, and one thing I note, I mentioned that about the CMF equity and inclusion strategy. So in our Convergent and experimental selective programs, we've allocated points in the evaluation grid so that if you are a member of a diverse community, make sure to fill out the persona ID form, and that will confirm these additional points that are allocated in the evaluation grid if you meet the criteria. And same thing for our pre-development program, early stage development program, and experimental conceptualization program. The 25% of the funds for these programs are reserved for applications where at least 40% of the producer, screenwriter, and director positions are held by members of a diverse community. So again, these will be confirmed by your persona ID number, and you can fill out that form on the CMF website. So that ends our presentation. If you have any questions, please, you can contact either Evilyn or myself, and you can also make note of our coordination team if you have any other, if you have trouble filling out our the information for persona ID or for just logging into Dialogue. So yeah, I'm just going to stop my screen.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine and Evelyn. That's lots of information. I'm sure lots of people will have some questions, but maybe before we get to questions, we'll talk to Luke for a bit here. And thank you for all that information. Thank you so much. So Luke is the film commissioner for Calgary. I've known Luke a few years here. And why don't you tell us about what you do and kind of what's going on in the industry here?
Sure. So why don't we start off just kind of giving an overview of what Alberta looks like right now, and then I can transition into what my job is and
For sure.
where I have an opportunity to maybe help people. So
Sounds good.
So we've seen the largest growth at any time in our history in Alberta in the film and television industry over the 2021 year. We doubled the amount of production for the previous calculable year, which is 2019, because we did have a time frame when we were down. The industry was very lucky. It had about a 3-month transition from going completely dark to actually coming back and reinvigorating. And we had one of the first projects in North America to get started here in Alberta, which was Winona Herb. It was at the Calgary Film Center. During the time that everything was down, they were able to create an environment in there that allowed for a transition back in with all the safety protocols that the studios were expecting. So this past year, we did $560 million worth of activity.
Wow.
Put ourselves in a position where we saw about 480,000 square feet of space being absorbed for film and TV and retrofitted. And now some purpose-built stages coming on board as well. So we are in the neighborhood of 550,000 square feet of space. A year and a half ago, we were at 50, which was the Calgary Film Center. So big transition there. Obviously, what drove this was the incentive. Our Minister Schweitzer from Jobs, Economy and Innovation transitioned our incentive from being a capped incentive, which did not allow us to go out and get these large projects and to grow the industry in a substantial way, as well as serving some of our local producers here and enabling them as well. So that day that it happened, we started to see some major attention across the globe on Alberta and what we were doing and how we were doing it. So we were able to secure some very large projects that now are enabling us to see this growth and development. So it's a stable environment at this point. There is, we have 5 questions that we ask now. It used to be 3. We have 5 questions that we're asked when we go into market, if we're in Los Angeles or New York or Cannes or Berlin, and they go in this manner. First and foremost, are your incentives competitive? We now have competitive incentives nationally, which then makes us internationally competitive. So that's number one. Secondly, how's your crew base? How good are your crews and how deep are they? We've seen growth over this last year, and we'll continue to see growth moving forward. Lots of initiatives that are being engaged in right now, such as the labor market study, which will give us a baseline of knowing exactly what's out there. Lots of programs in the work for training and development, and the unions and guilds, obviously, training at unprecedented levels in this province. Third question used to be, and this was the final question, was infrastructure. What do you have for studios? What do you have for sound stages? How can we come into Alberta, which does have winter here, and be able to work the entire year? So there's that process as well, which we're now very well embedded into a level of engagement that is at an A minus kind of zone, when the broadcasters, the studios, and the streamers are looking at where they're going to spend their big dollars, and also potentially where they're going to put a hub. So multiple projects, one after the other. So now the 2 questions that actually take precedent over everything else are around equity, diversity, inclusion, and access. What's the programs that you're running here? How are we ensuring that we have a more accessible and obtainable industry that is going to give everybody a path into it on our racialized, marginalized communities, as well as ensuring that training and development is done in a way where people can engage in it. It's not done in the traditional ways where everything is a very standardized form. It's determining the communities that you're bringing in, and how do you work with those communities to ensure that they have the best opportunity for success possible. For us to continue to be an A-level industry and choice, that's going to be a huge piece. There's no question that every streamer and broadcaster and studio is looking in this direction, and it's absolutely what we should have been doing from the beginning. But it's the transition is never going to be finished. There's no no sunset. We continue to go through the journey with the communities that we're trying to facilitate this with, and allow them to tell us what they need. So there's that part, and then it's sustainability. So what are we doing to ensure we're leaving everything as good or better than what we find it? For many years, this has been a vista location. So people are looking at Alberta because we have the mountains, the prairies, the foothills, the Badlands, and 2 municipalities of over 1 million people, all within a 3-hour radius.
15 hours of sunlight.
during the magic hours. I mean, those are the kind of things that they're trying to do. And we've been able to facilitate access to these areas over the years in a pretty substantial way. So we want to ensure that whatever it is that we're doing as an industry is going to put us in a position that we're leaving it for the next generation of storytellers and the next generation of folks that just want to enjoy it. So the list gets very deep, but what it does tell us is that we have these massive organizations that have a global footprint that are dictating to the regions, and this is across the globe, what's necessary for you to do to be able to not only maintain the level that you're at, but if you want to grow and you want to even be in the conversation, these are the things that have to happen.
Right on.
We have some great organizations here trying to drive some agendas. Creatives Empowered is one of them that has a national, a national connection with the BIPOC groups across the country that are doing things at a fairly significant pace. And we don't want to be followers. We want to be part of that progress, and we want to ensure that those connectivities happen. So we're trying to engage. We now have a variety of different film festivals in the city that are starting to cross many different communities and many different areas and genres. So it's important for us to to be paying attention and to be growing and be leaders in this, not just followers.
Right on. So, I mean, like I feel like there's so much going on in the city and the province. I think for a lot of people, it's kind of like a maze to navigate, like where do people get involved and stuff like that. So what would you say is a very easy entryway for people to understand what jobs are available and how would they access those jobs?
Absolutely. It's a great question because, the ladies did a fantastic job right now navigating us through the Telefilm and CMF processes. But I've been around a long time and I've got to pay a lot of attention to understand everything that's going on. So how do we ensure that we're putting people in a position where they have access to information and access to information in a way that they understand it? So there's a variety of ways. I mean, the unions and guilds are obviously one of the biggest employers. Excuse me. And they're, most of them are very free. I think all of them very free with information and helping people guide them to what's possible there. I think there's opportunities through, the Calgary Society of Independent Filmmakers who do programs and development and really do have contacts in all of the areas, so they can guide and direct. There's the film commissions. So there's going on to the Alberta Film website to try to determine the Calgary Economic Development Creative Industries website, which we're responsible for. So a variety of different paths that you can take. The post-secondaries, obviously another great route. And those post-secondaries now are creating and engaging in micro-credentialing and other areas, so skill development, skill upgrades, those kind of things, and they're directly connected to industry. So there's a path for getting in and then getting into the industry itself. So what I would say is this, the easiest path is to go to those websites, to go to the unions and guilds, go to our website or Alberta Film's website first, and you'll have the connection points from there. List of questions that you may have about the things that you're reading, and then they can connect with us at the Film Commission. And I hope at some point as we go through the process is that there's going to be more access points for people to help you disseminate the information that you're gathering so that you actually can find a way to what you need to get to instead of it just being frustrating and inaccessible, if you will.
For sure. So yeah, it definitely sounds like there's lots of opportunities right now and lots of opportunities coming.
Yeah. I think what we're trying to do is kind of two phases. You have two access points for funding in Alberta. The first is the SPG, right? So it's an Alberta. It's specifically an Alberta fund here of projects that are under $500,000 in budget, and that is a grant system. So it's a bit subjective. So there's only a certain amount of money, and you've got to, like the conversations we're having about Telefilm and CMF, when you have the opportunity to engage, you engage at the beginning so that you're in those upper portions of of access. The second is the FTTC, which is our film and television tax credit. And that is for projects above $500,000, whether they're Albertan or whether they're foreign production. The FTTC is a 22% fund that allows you for any spend that's labor, services, or goods that you make in Alberta for your Alberta project or for your project being done in Alberta. You have direct access. If you're an Albertan accessing that fund with the same criteria being met, you get 30%. So there's an advantage to being in Alberta and telling our stories and continuously sharing that to the world. On the grant system, it's 25% of your spend, but it's only for Albertans. And then there's a post-production grant on top of it that you can access. That's 18% labor. So as you're putting your project together, there's a variety of different ways, even before you get to the national level, that you would want to engage here in Alberta and access as much as you can from that. So when you're doing that, the idea is to talk to the folks at Alberta Film and identify what you're doing and help them guide you get to that point. As well as our office can give you some directs as well. So help you get there a little easier.
Right on. I think the thing I've always loved about the film industry here is there's opportunities for everyone if you know where to look. So whether you want to work like, you know, on a set or like on a TV show or a movie, or whether it is you want to like make new content, I feel like we have a lot of options and a lot of possibilities here. So maybe with that, let's just see here. Okay, so let's move into some questions. We've got one here right away. So I encourage everybody, if you're watching from home, you can comment right on the stream. If you're in the auditorium, I think there's someone who's taking questions. Maybe those can be disseminated back to us, I hope. But we have one to start right away. The first question is, what kind of supports are there in Alberta for emerging or mid-level creators to supplement the funding that CMF and Telefilm provides? Very quick question.
So through the Alberta project grant for larger projects up to 500,000, that's a direct connection, and then Telefilm funding and others can also be triggered through that or part of that. There's also for smaller programs for folks that are just starting, and this probably wouldn't then reflect on Telefilm and CMF, but it would be our AFA, our Alberta Foundation for the Arts grants that allow you smaller access to grants for smaller projects, get you started, get you engaged in those processes, and then leading into projects that are then big enough so you're going after the FTTC, and which then you can trigger Telefilm and potentially CMF funding as well. So there's lots of connectivity. Our Canadian system is pretty aligned. So as you're triggering and going through, you have a variety of areas that you can access funds. But so there is lots of funding here.
Yeah, for sure. There's also like funding that for myself I've been able to access with producers as well through like Telestory Hive. Even the city of Calgary sometimes puts out like micro grants for creative projects. How about from a CMF Telefilm side? Any insight?
You mean additional funding that might be available if you're emerging or mid-level creator? Say is to look into our development programs, especially pre-development, which is opening in June, and then there's a specialized program for racialized communities that's in September. Yeah, that would be a good way to get into the system, because basically all you need is a letter of interest to fit the criteria.
How about for here's a question for all three of you. For people who are like maybe not familiar with, a lot, I feel like maybe for some people, a lot of this information is a lot of heavy information that if maybe you just are getting into the industry, it's very overwhelming. I know for myself, it can be very overwhelming. So for someone who's like just starting out, just starting to write, maybe a script or research a documentary idea, what are some suggestions that we can give them to get them to this point, or to get them to a point where they can consider this kind of funding and stuff like that?
There's lots of programs out there. I mean, the Telestory Hive is one of them. The programs that locally here are done by CSIF, Calgary Society of Independent Filmmakers. There's an Edmonton counterpart in Edmonton as well. That you get funding, you get mentorship, you get technology available to you right from the beginning to the end of the project. So I think before embarking in something that's bigger than that, there's a variety of different access points that you want to get to, and a variety of different groups, even private sector groups that are able to help and facilitate, so you understand the processes, you gather the learning that's necessary to continue to move forward and get to bigger projects. But I think that training ground is extremely important, so you're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
I say, attend film festivals like this one for sure. You'll know about the funders, you'll meet other people, because you don't make a film or a project by yourself, it's with a team. So you really should meet your crew. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Christine's point, and always keep in mind that we have the pre-development for writers. It's if you're just starting writing your script, and you can always check out those programs. And also just another tip from my previous production experience, just, go out and meet with experienced producers, attach an experienced producer to your project, because then they could introduce you to a lot of broadcasting networking, possibilities or connections. And seriously, like most of our CMF programs, like in the development stage, you don't really need a lot of input from a broadcaster. They just, they show interest in your project. They give you a letter of interest that could already be used to leverage to trigger some of the fund that, help you through like development stage. So that's from my previous experience.
Right on. Do we have any questions from the audience or anything? Brian, do we have any? Okay. Sure. Okay. Yeah, I think something maybe I'll touch on this is that I really encourage if you're thinking about getting into the industry, or if you're kind of on the fence, is a great way really is just to get on set. Like whether it's like an independent production or like a school production or anything like that, that I feel like getting on set gives you so much of an understanding of how productions work, and how the things we see on TV or the things we see on the internet kind of come together. And there's just completely invaluable to be able to do that. So I really encourage people to do that for sure. Maybe another question I have too is, how do you? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of different. This is specifically for Telefilm and CMF. There's a lot of different like areas where you can apply for different projects and stuff like that. How would you encourage people to figure out like what it is they want to do? Because maybe a lot of people have a lot of different ideas, but how do, like, what are some ways that we can kind of like focus in on, doing what specifically they want to go after?
Well, I would, I'll go back to you, Evilyn, but just focus on our genres for sure. Like I said, if you have a lifestyle documentary, you can't get funding from us. But if you have anything that's scripted, that fits within our drama, which includes comedy categories, children's and youth, documentary, which is like a pure documentary, not lifestyle, and or variety program, you can come to us for funding. If you're working on a web series, we do have that digital linear series program that is quite popular for series that are in their second season. So it really depends on what you're looking for. If you're doing short films, then maybe we're not there for you. But if you're doing a demo or a sizzle, that could be part of your short film. Maybe, there's our development programs. So, Evilyn, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, I would also actually just give another tip. A lot of times our film producer, like our young, like new film producers, they felt like, okay, if I'm doing film, like Canada Media Fund is not going to help me, which is not, exactly true. If you have a project that you have in mind and think, okay, that's already, eligible for the CMF genres, you could always pitch that to broadcasters, because broadcasters do like their feature length drama film, and that only requires you to have a theatrical release plan. So which means it, instead of thinking, oh, I could only release it in, theaters, you actually have a window, a broadcast window. And Hollywood Suite is a very good broadcaster supporting that kind of program. And also maybe, I don't know if our audience is already aware, like we have so many diverse language focused broadcasters in the Canadian market. They actually support a lot of pilots. They support a lot of programs that, let's just try it out. So maybe broaden your pitch network and just go out and see, let's see what Newtan is doing nowadays, what Tele-Latino is doing nowadays. Is they usually would have a broader interest in supporting all kinds of programs in their like a smaller sizes who are, like earlier stages. So that's something I just thought about. I think it's worth mentioning here.
I mean, like that's a really great point, is seeing what these broadcasters are doing already. Because, I feel like sometimes everybody has ideas, but maybe the best idea is to kind of go with what's being made already. It's usually, I feel like, easier to pitch something that has some sort of foundation already. We have another question here, I believe from YouTube. It says, at the writing stage, how do you make connections and what can you suggest to move the project forward? Do you join writing clubs or anything like that? And maybe open it up to everybody here.
Well, I think it was said earlier, it's just trying to get into those rooms, right?
Mhm.
Trying to figure out who's writing in your area, who's where you have some access point, meet them, try to get some direction. There's some guilds out there as well that you can get involved in. The NSA, there's a variety of different programs across the country that allow you to get into the room and to try to figure it out. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, such a good suggestion. The National Screen Institute. They have such great programs.
Yeah. And the Writers Guild of Canada as well has also got different groups throughout the country that you can get access into and at least have an idea of what it's going to take to get to that next level and to get in front of some folks. I think, as the ladies both mentioned, I think there is the connection points are really a big deal. If you can actually get to folks that are working in the industry and in what you feel is your chosen genre at that point, try to say hello. Try to get in there. It doesn't mean stalking them, but
for sure,
getting in
maybe a little bit,
maybe getting in front of them and seeing if you can have a conversation.
Yeah.
Most people in this province are happy to have a conversation with the next generation of storytellers and try to help them along. I think most of them are gracious with their time.
For sure.
So if you're approaching it in the appropriate way, hopefully you can get a chance to get in front of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also a lot of producers, they are actually making the effort to include young writers, especially coming from the diverse community, into their writers' room. Let's say, I know already a few experienced, established productions. They actually recruit or post on social media just to ask, hey, we're looking for a couple of interns or just young writers to join our writers' room. After a couple of episodes or after the writing first development stage, and then you may be able to even join them in the production. So yeah, and open your eyes and look on the social media and see who's talking, who's hiring, and who's getting new writers.
Mm-hmm. I think the big thing from my end as kind of indie producer director, Facebook groups are really great. I think they're great places to kind of find your tribe, so to speak, right? People who kind of understand what you're trying to do and what you're trying to write, and they give feedback based off that. I think Facebook groups is also good for just connecting with people in the industry as well. I've created a lot of relationships through Facebook groups over the years. So yeah, I feel like it's you kind of have to be willing to get out there and kind of plug yourself in different places. So if there's no other questions, I want to thank everyone for their time. Luke, thank you for joining us today, and Christine and Evilyn, thank you for joining us and for all that great information. I encourage everybody, if you're out there and you're thinking about what the next steps are, there's some great resources that we've shared today. I think that there's some great resources that Luke talked about as well, different websites and stuff like that. And feel free to reach out to any of us, and I'm sure we'd love to answer any questions for you. So that's it. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you at the next event.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hello from British Columbia. My name is Elena.
Hello from Toronto, Ontario.
Hello, my name is Hannah Schaefer. I'm from Winnipeg.
Hi, this is Calgary Mayor Jyoti Gondek. I want to wish you a happy Asian Heritage Month and welcome you to the Fascination Film Festival.
I'd like to wish everyone an amazing Fascination Film Festival experience.
Welcome to the Fascination Film Festival.
Welcome to the Fascination Film Festival.
Hi, Ontario Wong Ward 7th City Councillor, Nehal. You know what I like about film festivals are all the untold stories in these films. These are great places to learn and listen and to understand what makes people laugh, cry, and at the end of the day, have fun. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Rick Zach. This is June Ren, my film partner, who lives in Shanghai. Welcome to the Fascination Film Festival. Enjoy the show.
On behalf of Fascination Film Festival organizers, we'd like to say Happy Asian Heritage Month, and we hope you enjoyed the festival and enjoy the movie.
Ideas can spark anywhere. There's one there, and another one over here, even here. Finding inspiration is unpredictable, spontaneous, precious, and making those ideas come to life requires teamwork. So keep finding those sparks, and we'll be there to support you. Sparking creativity from coast to coast to coast.